Navio War Room. Fighters approaching their designated targets. "They'll be in range in approximately 10 minutes, said Redford, his eyes flickering with a faint light as he did so. The Drazen and their so-called Lord Harrower are aware that they've lost space superiority. Redford, after their jamming satellites are destroyed, ignore any incoming signals unless they come from any of the 5 major cities on the planet. We need to establish direct communications with their leaders if we are to know what steps to take next, Clara ordered. It shall be so as my princess orders, Redford replied, then his expression softened. Clara, if I may, have you taken a rest yet? There's much to be done, Redford. I shall rest until I can secure our course of action. My troops did not rest until the battle was over. Now my battle begins. The princess's violet eyes showcased the strength of her conviction, silencing any further inquiry into the subject as she turned to the white-haired man to her left. Congratulations on securing the Eternal Garden, Milcades. Not a complete victory just yet, Milcades replied. His usually laid-back expression turned to a serious one as he continued. The surviving Drazen, the civilians, are contained in closed-off sections centered around their nurseries. We're maintaining life support to keep them alive, but what are we to do with the rest? We can clean the other sealed-off decks and sections one by one if you want to, my princess. There's no need to risk the lives of anyone else. Vent those sections or cut off life support entirely. I'll show the same level of respect these abominations show to their feed in kind, Clara declared, resolute and remorseless. Understood, my princess, Milcades replied, his expression relaxing. A few seconds later, he continued. It is done. Atuccio will see that your orders are carried out, Clara. I have to ask, though, what are we to do about the saplings? They're a possible bargaining chip that I may use depending on how negotiations with the planet's leadership proceed, the princess declared. Redford, I'll leave in your capable hands the compilation of events and the assessment of possible rewards in the form of commendations, medals, marks of veterancy, and promotions. It shall be my pleasure, my princess, Redford replied with a quick bow of his head. Before we move on from the subject, Clara, is the prince in good health? Roundabout way to ask if he hasn't lost his mind, if you ask me, old man, Cynthia answered, causing Clara to smile and send her friend a playful glance. What can I say? I'm a sentimental fool, Redford replied with a smirk. My brother is handling matters far better than even he expects from himself. On that note, Redford, you will receive a symbolic promotion after our great victory, Clara added with a mirthful undertone. As long as it remains symbolic, I shan't object. Admiralty has never been my calling, and I do not wish to deprive myself of the freedom being a commander grants. I'll leave such ambitions to those who wish to waste away behind a desk or surround themselves with brainless sycophants and cow towers. You may be unable to deny a real promotion for long if another victory of similar scale is stored under your belt, old man. You are already treading on thin ice, Vorpalstrike. Be careful, or you'll be a victim of your success, Milcades taunted with a playful smile. Redford scoffed, crossing his arms. Such threats are moot, Milcades. Was it really my victory when we all know that a single man was responsible for tipping the scales in our favor? Speaking of him, Clara, I've received his psyche evaluation report as you ordered, Cynthia announced, her eyes flickering slightly. It is quite substantial. Well, don't retain the suspense and be out with it at once, Clara demanded with curiosity clear in her voice. Following her instructions, her bodyguard wasted no time and shared the report with everyone present. To her surprise, instead of a written report, a video appeared on the screen. On it, a concerned-looking head physician could be seen. My princess, as you've requested, the psyche report on one Lieutenant Wyatt Staples has been sent to you in private. This evaluation will not be affiliated with the lieutenant's public records aboard the Navio. However, after reviewing the results, I saw it as necessary to send you not only the results in written form, but also to address the more alarming points that were uncovered during his evaluation. The head physician took in a breath, cleared his throat, and leaned forward, his cybernetic eyes reflecting worry and apprehension. Firstly, before I begin, allow me to apologize in advance for any perceived insult I may spark, but there is no other way to describe what I'm about to say. My princess, I've served in the Royal Navy for over 40 years. I've seen death, loss, madness, and worse throughout my career. I've dealt with men and women breaking after suffering from mental stress, overwhelming terror, and intense PTSD. seen sociopaths and murderers do their worst, and witnessed the downfall of honorable nobles turning into jaded, emotionally bankrupt individuals as a result of their actions. Another pause was marked by the head physician choosing his next words carefully. That being said, Lieutenant Wyatt Staples's is a most curious case. I wouldn't go as far as to say that his mental stability is a unique case, though, at the same time, given that he was a mere commoner for the longest time and only recently elevated by the grace of your most benevolent brother, His Majesty, the Prince. I cannot fathom the conditions and experiences that could result in his current state. The most educated verdict that I can bestow is the following. Wyatt Staples' mental fortitude is abnormally normal. The head physician closed his eyes for a moment, raising both hands in front of him. My assistant was beyond confounded by the initial results, and I was forced to step in personally to carry out the rest of his examination. With good reason. My princess, there is not a single person, outside from true sociopaths and psychopaths, murderers and bloodthirsty maniacs, that should be so casual and unaffected by inflicting so many deaths in such a short amount of time. His hand aboard the gallant venture claimed 145 lives, yet he feels no remorse, guilt, or regret. None whatsoever other than expressing that he would have preferred a less bloody approach. The head physician lowered his hands, but his expression hardened. Further inquiry into his mental state revealed that he does, in fact, feel empathy. But his empathy is highly selective and conditional. He holds no love for what he perceives to be his enemy. In his own words, if they're trying to kill me, why shouldn't I try to kill them too? His mind operates in an easy-to-understand yet complex set of morals, values, and priorities that, frankly, baffles me. He is ruthless in execution, brutal in efficiency, inconsiderate in application, but not indiscriminate. He values his survival above all, but he also values the lives of his allies. He is not a glory-seeking warrior or a bloodlust-fueled monster. His approach to life is both pragmatic and, to a certain extent, apathetic. Lieutenant Staples is also, unsurprisingly, socially awkward. Polite, to be sure, but not sociable. His patience is also remarkable, and his vocal revulsion for needless cruelty and lack of interest in setting himself as above others reassures me that we're not dealing with a cunning serial killer. A sigh of relief escaped his lips before continuing. Although I started by using all the standard tests, Sir Wyatt passed them with no issues. My princess, know that I say this not as an attempt of adulation. His results make no sense. I cannot begin to imagine the series of events that created his current psyche. Knowing that he experienced the most pleasant sleep in years after the massacre he carried out single-handedly is enough for me to keep him at arm's length. Confusion and concern were reflected on his expression as he took a second to organize his thoughts. This man is of commoner birth. He shouldn't be able to deal so casually with death, yet he does and delivers it with casual ease. It is my professional opinion that Lieutenant Staples has somehow achieved a level of mental fortitude that is, incredulous as it may first appear, as close as can be to that of a Royal Marine. It has been all but impossible for me to understand the lieutenant's psyche in its totality. I can, therefore, only make a best guess. For those people he considers his allies and probably friends, he will go to almost any lengths. In contrast, he will also do nearly anything his labyrinthian mind can conjure to stop his enemies. I will note one thing that stands above all else and convinces me that he is to be trusted. I am confident that his loyalty to you, your highness, and your most venerated brother, the prince, appears to me to be without doubt. If you require anything else from me, you just need to command me, my princess. With that, the video ended. I suspected as much. Milcades was the first to speak after the brief silence that followed the report's end. A broken child that formed several walls around himself just to retain his sanity, and yet he didn't lose himself to despair, nihilism, or craven indulgence. There were those who guided him, showed him compassion, and eventually reminded him that he wasn't truly alone. The orange-eyed man shook his head as his eyes narrowed dangerously. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Imagine that deadly creativity, that near-suicidal focus on achieving victory set against us. A nightmare scenario now that we've witnessed and experienced his capabilities, Redford agreed. With the proper motivation and ambition, say, hatred towards the principality, he could have become an insurrectionist or rebel leader, or worse, a most renowned pirate lord. Then we're fortunate that his loyalty is ours, and that these unfortunate set of events led us to discover him instead of him having become a dangerous threat, or waste away as a mere compost hauler in a forgotten area of the Principality, Clara proclaimed firmly. Fortunate indeed, Cynthia added. Although, Milkady's playful expression returned, describing him as abnormally normal is a roundabout way of saying he's paradoxical. Wouldn't you agree, Commander? Redford shook his head and closed his eyes in frustration. Must you? Truly? Blame yourself, Vorpal-Strike, for having so little ways to poke fun at you, Cynthia said, joining her friend with a slight smirk. Is this the respect you show to your elders and superiors? You two should be ashamed, Redford replied, opening his eyes and showcasing a knowing smirk of his own. As much as I find these interactions delighting, Redford, is it possible for Wyatt to achieve another ace mark? If I'm not mistaken, 2 were awarded to him after gin tracks, yes? Clara asked, stepping in but enjoying the playful banter between those she trusted and held in close regard. If I were to count the entirety of our engagement with the Drazen and traitor forces as a singular battle with escalations, then perhaps I could justify awarding him an ace mark and turning him into a bronze ace, Redford replied, pinching his chin. What about his victory over Maximilian? Beating a lone wolf has to earn him another mark on itself at the very least, no? Milkady's questioned. The problem is that he didn't beat Maximilian. Maximilian defeated Wyatt in combat, but thanks to Wyatt's leadership skills and his squad, the Roaring Thunder was silenced, Redford countered. That, however, showcases that Wyatt is suited to a leadership role even if he doesn't have real experience or training as an officer. What little I've been able to instruct on him and what he's clearly learned through observation and by taking advice from others has served him well so far. You'll find a way to justify it, Clara claimed. I want my personal fighter pilot to be a shining beacon for all to see. A dangerous man, to be sure, but a great one. If it were up to me to decide alone, I'd grant him every kill his torpedo tactic claimed, Redford chuckled in amusement. Technically speaking, exceedingly so, every fighter, gunship, and bomber destroyed could be claimed by him and him alone. I commanded the Nornavio. This is true, but the application of his idea relied entirely on his machinations, and he was piloting his fighter at the time. That would elevate him neatly beyond Rhodium Ace. Perhaps I should make it so? He asked, joking. A bronze ace requires 3 ace marks. 7 for silver, 10 for gold, 15 for platinum, 20 for osmium, 30 for palladium, and 50 for rhodium. The final rank has only been claimed by the legendary Luminor Tintar, the first lone wolf in the Principality's history. Practically drooling at the idea of having a pilot under her service that could match, and technically speaking surpass the first lone wolf, Clara was only barely able to contain the urge to make it an official royal command. Clara, he was only joking. Cynthia stepped in, clutching her friend's left shoulder gently. Shaking her head slightly, Clara cleared her throat as an embarrassed blush covered her cheeks for a few seconds. As tempting as that possibility may be, military commands and noble society would implode on themselves if it were to happen. Many eyes already frown upon his advancement. I'd rather not deal with more daggers and the venom of vipers already set to strike against him than those already poised to strike him down at the nearest provocation, imagined or not. My princess, Redford said, his tone showcasing nothing but seriousness. My fighters are in position and ready to strike. Begin, Clara ordered. They didn't see it. There was no need. The holographic map at the center of the table sprung to life, showcasing the position of the satellites and their fighters. The confirmation that the jamming satellites were destroyed came moments later as all 20 were destroyed quickly. Then, they waited for what felt like the passing of an age until Redford straightened in his seat. Obeying her previous order, Redford linked the transmission to the main screen. She was greeted not by Gusef Onraste, as she'd expected, but by a dark-skinned man with a heavy scar on his left cheek and short, wavy brown hair. He was wearing a military uniform that was pressed and cleaned, a contrast to the half-ruined bomb behind him. Greetings, Principality forces. I'm Grand General Percival Bucktail. On behalf of Revel and her people, I thank you for your assistance. The man bearing cybernetic eyes thanked, even as dread could be seen in his expression. I welcome your greetings and give mine in kind, Grand General. I am the second princess of the Astorian Principality, Princess Clara Astor. Clara presented herself with her immaculate practice, her expression never faltering and her tone neutral and serious, yet cold and unflinching. This is a surprise, I must admit. I was expecting Gustav von Rasta to contact me, not one of his generals. At the mention of the rebel leader's name, Percival spat with contempt. If you wish to claim his head, you're too late, Princess. I personally beheaded the liar myself 2 days ago. You are most welcome to see his head and that of 1,000 loyal sons of bitches that blindly followed his regime adorning the fence of the palace. His sons, daughters, wife, and many, many bastards included. May them all burn in hell, the man confessed, showing little to no respect to the princess, but speaking truthfully. Clara relaxed her posture and subtly changed her tone to appear more approachable without losing the weight behind it. Ah, that explains much. It seems you've unwittingly dealt me a great service, Grand General. I was going to send my Royal Marines on top of him to end his miserable life in response to all his crimes against the Principality. I have no love for the Principality, the man began. I was a teen when the Great Revolution happened, joined on Rasta's forces to put down the damn Blue Bloods pressing on us. I killed many with my own hands, Percival revealed without remorse. The same fence that now holds on Rasta's heads was adorned with the heads of nobles and Blue Bloods for months on end. Clara raised an eyebrow. If that's your best attempt at intimidation, Grand General, then I must inform you I've heard fiercer threats come from drunkards. Never said I was trying to, Clara Astor, Percival replied with a defiant grin, which caused Cynthia to glare at him from her seat. You misunderstand. I ain't trying to scare you off. Not after you fed the damn Xenos the sun 6 times. We saw the explosions from planetside. Ugly tentacled freaks have been going at it like crazy more than ever. I truly thank you for everything you've done. I merely want you to know who you're dealing with. Ah, Clara let out with a playful smile. So you claimed Gustav's head and positioned yourself as the new leader? Precisely, Percival admitted. Gustav was an ambitious man, and once I believed in his vision of unity and prosperity for all those who had suffered under the heel of petty Blue Bloods. I believed in the Great Revolution. I was such a damn fool, he spat again angrily. Once the Blue Bloods were gone, Gustav sat his ass on the throne and claimed it for himself. At first, things worked out. We commoners were finally free to follow our own desires. We celebrated. Drunk from our victory, we could now prosper as the rich bounties of our labor would fill our accounts and satisfy our bellies, he said with rancid bitterness. But restrictions came soon after, martial law under the new regime. The illusion was broken not even 2 years after our victory. Not everyone was happy with the changes, especially those who never wanted to leave the Principality. The purges! Percival shook his head, gritting his teeth. My bed was made by then. I couldn't look back. Less so when the damn Sons of Darkness came and were offered refuge. One thing I can say in favor of Gustav is that he beat the Principality and the Ferentis every time they came knocking. I rose through the ranks and eventually found myself as one of his closest generals, for all the good that did. Then I must presume that the alliance with the Drazan was a step too much? Clara asked, unamused. I told Gustav that making deals with Xenos would not achieve what he wanted. He nearly killed me for daring to defy his wisdom. But the Xenos betrayed us after their defeated survivors arrived in system, Percival grimaced. Ever since we were cut off from the Principality, many goods became scarce. We had to do everything ourselves, sustain ourselves. We couldn't do it all. Almost everything went to building defenses and supplying the pirates to raid nearby systems. When they attacked, they destroyed almost everything. Our military bases, intelligence center, main weapon depots, factories, and assembly lines were targeted and destroyed from orbit, but they spared the major population centers. For capture? Clara asked, knowing there was no other answer. It had the desired effect. Percival spat again in annoyance. And here I thought you Astors were smart. Yes, Princess. They spared us just to turn us into cattle and eat us. Damn beasts. We've been fighting them tooth and nail with whatever weapons survived and what little we can rig up. We still have aircraft, tanks, artillery, and battlesuits, but we're running out of ammo and fuel fast. Soon, we'll have to fight them with nothing but stocks and stones. Then perhaps I should allow the Drazan to do as they please until you are defenseless, Clara said, surprising Percival, who had, up until now, carried the conversation as he desired. Why should I help rebels and traitors to the Principality? We're humans, Percival replied, frowning. You can't just leave us to our fates. Why not? Clara challenged, eyes narrowing dangerously. You've pillaged, slain, and worse. Do not take me for a fool, Percival Bucktail. I know of all the atrocities your great revolution has done over the years. You claim that we should help you because you're humans. Yet you and your pirate allies happily defile, murder, and enslave those they capture to work in their mines, fields, and factories as expendable manpower. I should leave you to die and be feasted on by the Drazen, and then deal with them after your great revolution is dead and gone. You would happily condemn hundreds of millions to such a fate without remorse? Percival asked, appalled. My hands are stained with the blood of millions already. What are a few more when they are unworthy rebels and petty criminals? Clara replied coldly. Percival's eyes narrowed too, and he gritted his teeth. I'm not going to surrender to you if that's what you want. And who is the callous ideologue now, Percival? Clara pressed on. You point your finger at me, claiming I'd happily let millions die, yet you do the same just to retain your power. Truly, I wonder who is more monstrous between the two of us. I will not, Percival began, but was quickly interrupted. I don't want your surrender, Clara pointed out, much to everyone's surprise. I want your cooperation. My cooperation? Percival asked, curious yet wary. In exchange for ending your great revolution, I offer you not only peace, but amnesty. A royal pardon for all your crimes. You may retain your power, but Hastrung will rejoin the principality as part of House Ferentis's territory. You can't make that call, even if you're a princess, Percival challenged. I can and I will, but the finer points of our dealings can be dealt with after a show of force? I'll let you decide the following. I have your coordinates locked and I can destroy you now. She paused, watching Percival's eyes widen with fear and anger. Or, she continued, you can give me the coordinates of the Drazen headquarters and launch a unified assault upon the enemy lines as a distraction, and I will remove the Drazen leadership alongside as many of them as I can. Percival analyzed the princess for long, silent moments until, defeated, his eyes narrowed. You said you wouldn't help us against the Xenos. What are you playing at, Aster? I never said that I wouldn't help you. I merely said that I could leave you to your fates without contrition. And I don't wish to help you or your rebels. I want the planet. I want the system. I have space superiority and reinforcements will arrive in mere weeks. A full planetary liberation force. You'll be nothing but target practice by that point. Clara smiled darkly. But I'm not without reason, Grand General. I'm a sensible woman. I want peace above all. So what if you retain power as long as I get what I want? You're in the middle of a succession dispute, Princess. I doubt you have the forces to spare for such a grand-scale effort. We'll dig into the mountains and hills. We'll go deep into the swamps and jungles and forests to hide. You'll never silence us, Percival countered. Clara sighed. And that's precisely why I wish to avoid such an outcome. Grand General, you are a fool if you believe you could hold against a well-armed, trained Principality invasion force with no space or orbital assets, a crippled economy, and no means to resupply what little you have left. You'll be a nuisance at best, she said, and waited until Percival looked away in frustration and irritation. You're right about the current conflict, but that is a problem for the noble houses to deal with, not the Principality at large. I'd rather not divert forces to an unnecessary cause when a deal can be easily made. For a long minute, the Grand General remained silent, his eyes focused on Clara. When he finally spoke, his eyes narrowed. Agreeing to these talks, what will that entail? Clara smiled. As princess, I can oversee the diplomatic talks and give legality to the deals made. Fortunately for us, a high-ranking member of House Ferentis is with me. He can speak on behalf of his house, setting demands and offers in equal measure. Clara leaned forward, a wolfish smirk present on her lips as her eyes radiated a coldness that seemed to reach past the screen and gently grasp Percival's neck with the tenderness of a predator ready to deal the fatal blow. But that will come after you see what I can do. Now, will you cooperate with me and reap the rewards of supporting a princess of House Aster? Or will I have to add your head to the fence you mentioned? Percival didn't hesitate as he bowed his head. I accept your terms, my princess. I shall send you the coordinates immediately and inform my men of the decision made. Not many loyal to Gusev's ambitions remain. It will be easy to convince them of the wisdom of your guidance. See that you do, Percival. Be prepared to launch an assault with whatever forces are available to you. I shall contact you to coordinate soon. With that, Clara ended the communication and allowed herself to lean back in her seat, sighing heavily. I wasn't aware that we had reinforcement incoming. Are we certain that these reinforcements aren't part of my princess's overactive imagination? Milcades said, smirking. Shush you, Clara quickly reprimanded. Redford, summon our head officers, Istanel and Jincho, at once. The Akanti? Cynthia asked, confused, while Redford closed his eyes, carrying his orders. I have a special task in mind that I believe only he can achieve, Clara replied cryptically. Cynthia merely rolled her eyes. It is done, my princess. Shall I summon Wyatt? Redford asked. No need. I've summoned him, Clara revealed. A few moments later, Redford turned to Clara. My princess, Galt informs me that a data package is being sent from the Grand Palace of the capital city. No viruses or corrupt data has been detected. Man has more brains than I thought, Milcades commented with amusement as he put on his helmet. Data received. Do you wish to see it, my princess? Redford asked. Let's wait until everyone is here, Clara said in a relaxed tone. It didn't take long for the head officers to arrive one by one. Jincho arrived next, much to the surprise of the head officers. Istenel arrived a minute later, and lastly Wyatt a minute after. Everyone took their seats, greeting the princess and Commander Redford with reverence. After a brief summary of her conversation with the Grand General, she turned to Redford and nodded. On screen, a vast forested landscape appeared, with a nearby mountain chain and several rivers crossing the land. Near the foothills of the mountain range, a large clearing could be seen, with many structures dotting it. Outside the clearing, several sections of the forest were marked with various warning signs. To the north and east, the space between the forests and two large cities, including the capital, was marked as an active combat zone. Is the information accurate? Asked Redford. According to our sensors, it is. Without the jamming satellites, we're able to detect several dozen transmissions going back and forth. Atmospheric interference renders our sensor data largely unreliable, but in coordination with the data provided by the inhabitants of Revel, Hago. The planet's name is Hago, not whatever drivel these rebels chose for it, Istenel interjected. We've been able to conclude that the information is correct. That's where their base of operations is, Galt continued, unamused. What more information do we have available to us? Seraton de Shire asked cautiously. Only that the Drazen launch continuous raids and assaults on rebel forces. They are barely able to repel them, but the Drazen keep gaining terrain at a steady pace. They've overwhelmed minor settlements and other nearby outposts. We know their usual tactics of capture, Redford replied. The rebels have also been unable to inflict any significant casualties. The Drazen have superior technology, better range, better equipment, and are dug in deep in the territory they control. Their supplies can't last forever, Sabraska Kaspars took over. Without their fleet and cattle ship, they will run out of steam sooner or later. Even if they have fabricators with them, they don't have the resource collection capabilities to supply themselves for more than a few weeks, maybe months. But as they are now, landing forces outside their perimeters would be suicidal, Fabian de Shire pointed out. The ground forces at our disposal wouldn't make a dent in their numbers before we're wiped out. Not that it would matter, Istenel spoke up again. See their position? The Drazen prefer open spaces with more humidity, but they chose a perfect location where their superior ambush and guerrilla tactics would grant them an overwhelming advantage. I suspect they have prepared kill zones and retreat points. They don't like it, but they are surprisingly good miners and can retreat into tunnels of their making. How do we eliminate their Lord Harrower and give the rebels a show of force at the same time? Clara asked rhetorically. I will not send my Royal Marines down against such overwhelming odds. What are our options? The Navio isn't equipped with orbital bombardment weaponry, Lupin Lusanto said. The railguns can act as such, but the margin of error is substantial. Air resistance, gravitic shift, the planet's curvature, atmospheric pressure, and humidity. Any such factor and margin of error could alter even our most precise calculations. The damage inflicted will be substantial regardless, but they are unfit for such a task. What about the pulse beam? Asked Sabraska. The pulse beam, alongside the rest of the Navio's weaponry, is designed for void combat. The damage could be significant, but in contact with the atmosphere, the pulse beam would dissipate too fast, and its destructive potential would be reduced to less than a third of its full capability. If that, Lupin replied. What if we use our fighters? The question never left Fabian's lips as Jincho angrily screeched at him. Absolutely not. Void fighters are meant for the void! Void! Featherbrain has head empty. Our fighters touch the atmosphere, they turn to slag on re-entry. Wasted, Jincho countered. The room fell silent for several moments until Wyatt Staples' voice made itself known. We still have one antimatter torpedo left, he stated casually. Can it survive re-entry? Every set of eyes fell upon him with quiet disbelief, making him blink in surprise. What? This is not the time for jokes, Lieutenant Staples, Redford said, chuckling, and the tension in the room evaporated. Yes, the antimatter torpedo could survive re-entry and be used against the Drazen, but the devastation it would incur on the planet is beyond imagination. We're trying to make a show of force, not kill the Drazen and the planet with them. I never took one as serious as you for a jokester, Sir Wyatt. Well done. I believed you were serious for a moment there, Istenel said with a boisterous laugh. But I was being serious, Wyatt thought, deciding to keep that little fact to himself. With his first idea thoroughly refuted, he went back to thinking. Clara wanted a show of force, but wanted to avoid the devastation of the planet and kill whatever a Lord Harrower was. He didn't need to understand what or who it was. All he cared about was that the Lord Harrower was a Drazen, and as a Drazen he wanted it to die, preferably in a pyre. Think, Wyatt, think. The torpedo is out of the question. The railguns are useful but ineffective for precise bombardment. Landing troops is suicide. I doubt even Cynthia would survive for long against them in such circumstances. The thought made his stomach churn with disgust, and the idea was discarded entirely from his mind. We have 2 Mantis tanks, but those are useless too, if we can't get them on the ground fast enough. Wouldn't matter either way. As powerful as they are, 2 tanks won't make the difference. The hot drop pods are also useless. They're for boarding actions and quick insertions. And we don't have any ROSFs, so the orbital drop pods are also... Wait, he thought, eyes opening as an idea formed in his mind. We have orbital drop pods, Wyatt said, gaining everyone's attention again. Her Majesty already said she won't sacrifice any Royal Marine for nothing, Saraton countered. We don't need to send anyone, Wyatt began, glancing at Clara for permission to continue. With a simple gesture, he continued. We have tactical mines. They're big, but if the drop pods can be emptied out and filled with 1 or 2 tactical mines, we could drop them on top of the Drazen and remotely detonate them. That is doable. Positively brilliant, Sabraska laughed. We have an abundance of tactical mines, and we could use the fabricator to make more... And more drop pods, Jincho interjected. We have materials. Many materials all around us. Debris, cattle ships, storage bays, and more drop pods in gallant venture. Many more. Make it rain fire on the plants. The damage will be substantial, but contained for the most part to whatever area we designate, Redford added, looking at Wyatt with approval. My princess? Can the drop pods be refitted in time? She asked in a serious tone. Why, yes, Lupin replied eagerly. A triviality, in fact, my princess. Give me the order, and my technicians and engineers shall commence immediately. With a coordinated assault to draw the Drazen's fire away from intercepting the orbital drop pods, I believe it could be done, said Saratan, bemused. My princess, I believe this will be our best course of action. If we combine it with a volley of railgun strikes beforehand, the Drazen will be taken by surprise. Then so it shall be done. Technician-in-Chief, see to it immediately. Head Officers Galt, Sabraska, and Saratan make preparations to coordinate with the planet forces, calculate runtime estimations, and procure the resources needed for the task at hand. Head Officer Fabian, make preparations for a potential follow-up ground assault. You have your orders. Dismissed, Redford commanded, his voice booming and full of authority. Sir! The head officers saluted, stood up, bowed before their princess, and then left the room. When they were gone, Redford turned to Istenel. Thank you for your advice and cooperation, Lord Istenel. My pleasure. Oh, not to be a burden, my princess, but when may I board the Eternal Garden? I simply must review my possible specimens. You will board in 3 hours, Clara replied with a pleasant smile. Naturally, you will be escorted. Your Lord Father would be most displeased if you were to be lost. Naturally, Istenel replied and moved to exit the room. As he walked past Wyatt, he stopped. Congratulations on your many efforts, Sir Wyatt. Wyatt nodded once. Istenel smiled and walked out of the room, never losing his noble posture. How do you come up with these crazy ideas so quickly, I wonder? Cynthia asked a few moments after the doors closed. Drazen will die. What more can I ask for? Wyatt replied with a smile before seeing Jincho leap from his seat directly at him. Catching the surprisingly heavy but manageable Ikanti, Wyatt didn't expect a hug he received, though. Jincho? So much data! Wonderful, delicious, amazing data, Jincho proclaimed. And you! You bring death and fury on enemies. You are a worm-brained maniac. With that, he ended the hug. We'll refit another fighter. Just for you. Better, stronger, faster. Wyatt couldn't help but smile. I'm looking forward to it, Master Technician Jincho, he said, bowing his head for the Yikanti, who drank up the adulation and praise for all it was worth. Speaking of that, Jincho? Clara asked as a playful, knowing smile was pursed on her lips. Yes, Pretty Eyes, Jincho asked, turning to Clara. Again with that? Cynthia protested, eyeing the Yikanti. I'll have the remains of Maximilian's fighter recovered. Could you inspect it and perhaps restore it? I'll pay you handsomely, I can assure you, Clara proposed. Jincho nodded. As long as I have data and more than scraps, I can. May not see combat again. Imitation, nothing more, but good prize. Trophy, yes. Yes, Clara said, clapping her hands together, much to the amusement of everyone present except for a blue-haired demon shaking her head slowly. Now off you go, you two. My princess, Wyatt said, bowing his head slightly. Goodbye, Pretty Eyes, Hungry Eyes, Jincho said, waving a hand at the two women. Clara giggled while Cynthia's mouth opened in shocked disbelief. Redford stifled a laugh while Milcady's was not so generous. A few moments later, Jincho and Wyatt were out of the room and walking down the hallway. The Yikanti chirped, feathers ruffling. Hey, Maniac, want to eat something? Jincho asked with enthusiasm. Thanks, but I'm still full. I ate a lot not too long ago, but I could use something to drink, Wyatt replied. Great! We go now. Say, saw you munching on lechoas one time. You have more? Jincho asked. I have many, many more, Wyatt replied with a smirk. Want some? Never tried them. Too busy on woodshaft. Always repairing. Got curious. Would like to taste, Jincho chirped again. Say, Wormbrain, what it feels like to own a ship? I wouldn't know. I don't own a ship. Piloted haulers, fighters, a gunship twice, and a bomber once, Wyatt replied truthfully. But you own ship, Jincho said before smacking the floor twice. She's yours. Wyatt stopped and looked down at Jincho, confused. I think you're confused, Jincho. Clara the princess owns the ship, not me. Yes, she great owner, but you own her too, Jincho began. Doug records when making repairs to exposed coils. You renamed ship. Samuel's Glory Blurg. Awful name. You named her Norinavio. She not yours, he said, putting emphasis on the second yours. But by right, you also own Norinavio. Right of capture and renaming! Your name there, hidden, but there. Wyatt stared at the Yikanti as time itself lost meaning. He blinked once, twice, and then opened his mouth as a single word danced past his lips. Oh, and promptly fainted 2 seconds later. Maniac? Maniac! Help! Help! I killed Wormbrain! Jincho cried out in a panic.